Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Yui here. So today I want to talk about some armor. And who better than this fine specimen right here than to do a little bit of a fashion show for us. But more specifically, in armor, I'm talking about the ones that have special or added benefits to them. Not going to really be going over his armor as a whole. If you want to see like an armor video based on what stats you really want to worry about, that could be something of a separate video. Let me know if you want to make that one. But as for today, I just want to talk about the ones that have special or added benefits to them, or hidden perks. So we're going to every single one, so that's all the helmets, which a lot of them are. There are some for the chest and not many for the arms and legs. So this is somewhat of a new concept to the Soul series, where you just have hidden perks and benefits to the armor sets. It has been done before, but definitely not to this extent. So this is a really good thing and a bad thing at the same time. So good thing meaning that you can just have perks for free that you otherwise wouldn't have through other means. But the bad thing is, the most glaring part about this is that if you want to have that added benefit, you're forced to wear that armor piece, and half of them are really ugly. So for fashion, not really the greatest, but if you don't really care about that and care about min-maxing your build, then that's what we're going to be going over today. First things first, something I do want to mention is that I have started streaming on Twitch. So if you haven't already, please follow my channel, twitch.tv/Yui_. As the time of releasing this video, maybe a bit after, maybe a couple hours after releasing this video, I will be going live on Twitch. So if you haven't already followed my channel, please do. I'll just link it down below also. But we'll just get right into it. So as always, I am going to categorize all of these. So I'm going to have a separate category for the armor pieces that boost spells, so sorceries, incantations. Going to have ones that boost your weapons or items. Armor pieces that boost your stats as a whole. And I'll probably have like a little miscellaneous section towards the end. But yeah, that out the way, just get right into it. Okay, first we're going to be going over the spell-based armor sets. So first up we have here is the Ulbrich Pointed Hat. So this one boosts your thorn-based sorceries. So your thorn-based sorceries are your blood-based sorceries. It increases it by about roughly 2 or 3% per piece you have on. So you can have the hat. You can also put on the chest piece and the gauntlets. Unfortunately, the legs won't actually give you any benefit. So it's really only the ones that have those red gems on them. So you can probably get a total of roughly about 8 or 9% total boosted damage to your blood type sorceries. And it does have an altered version for the hat as well, which is like a cool little blindfold. But yeah, this boosts your blood-based sorceries. Next, we have the Snow Witch hat. This one will boost your cold-based incantations by 10%. So your cold-based incantations include the Rani's Dark Moon, Glintstone Ice Crag, the Zamuro Ice Storm, and the Adula's Moonblade. This is one's the obvious option if you're going to go with a cold build. Next, we have the Radiant Gold Mask. This one will boost your Golden Order incantations by 10%. So your Golden Order incantations are the incantations that have those rings of light. So the Rings of Light, the Radagon Ring of Light, the Discus Light, they will all be increased in damage by roughly 10%. Next up, we have the Crucible set. So this will be the same for the Crucible tree as well. This will boost your aspects of the Crucible incantation. So the aspects of the Crucible tail, the horn, and the breath. It will increase that by roughly 2% per item. So you can put on the whole set if you wanted to. And then you'll just get a boost to roughly about 8% in total, which is obviously really nice. There's no downsides to having it on whatsoever. Next, we're going to be going over the Incantation Scarab. So this one will reduce FP cost of your incantations by 15%. However, it will hurt your damage negation also. So as you can see, it's not going to be by that much. So if you wanted to use it while patrolling around and you just want to save your FP, it can be fine. These will stack with the FP talisman. I forget the name of it, but it also will stack with things like that. So that's a pretty decent option, something to keep in mind if you are struggling with your FP consumption. The Glintstone Scarab is exactly the same thing except for sorceries. So this one's for incantations, this one's for sorceries. Next we'll go over the... Where is she? Azur's Glintstone Crown. So this one will boost your Comet sorceries. So your Comet sorceries include your Comet Azur, will increase that by 15% damage. The Glintstone Comet Shard and the regular Comet Sorcery will be increased by 10% more damage. However, it does have the downside of increased FP cost of all spells by roughly 15%. So if you want to go for just an absolute just DPS build, if you just want to just melt a boss really quickly or use it for PvP, it's perfectly fine. As for just using it, consistently having it on and just traversing and patrolling throughout the overworld, wouldn't really recommend it, but putting on for a boss fight or PvP is still plenty fine. The Luzat's Glintstone Crown. This one will increase the damage of Stars of Ruin and by 15% and the damage of Star Shower and Glintstone Shards by 10%. However, it will have the same downside of the Azur's Glintstone Crown, as it will increase the FP cost by 15%. So once again, it's really good for boss fights and PvP. So being that the Stars of Ruin is like pretty much a PvP based spell, having this on and spamming that can make for a very toxic combination. And next we have the Godskin Noble Robe. This one will increase the Noble Presence incantation by about 20%. The incantation is actually really good, so having this on will make for just a very nice combination. However, as you can see, it is not the most fashion-friendly thing to wear, so keep that in mind. Alrighty, time for the armor sets that improve your weapons or items. So first, going over the Spellblade Pointed Hat, this one increased the damage of your Glintblade or Glintstone weapon skills. So they include like your Glintblade Phalanx or your Glintstone Pebble, both of which are really solid weapon skills. So just do more damage to that. With each piece you equip will increase it by roughly 2%. So the full armor set can be equipped, whether it's altered or not. So with the whole armor set will end up roughly increasing it by about 8%, which is still really solid, being that those Ashes of War are really, really good. Next, going over the Shining Horned Headband. This one will increase the damage of your Ancestral Infant Head. So that is an item that pretty much does this AoE attack, which is pretty good for crowd control. It will increase that item by about 20%. So if you're not spec'd to any spells and you want something for decent crowd control, having that on is pretty nice. And you can put this helmet on to just do more damage with it, which is a decent option. Next, going over the Ash of War Scarab. So very similar to how the other scarabs work. This one will decrease the FP consumption of your skills by 15%, but it will increase your damage taken. So do take that with a grain of salt. So it's going to be not really the greatest thing to be constantly have on, but if you have something in mind where you're spamming your weapon out a lot, but you don't really have the FP to use it, and you're like using it for a boss fight or for PvP even, I don't know. I really wouldn't use it much of PvP because your FP consumption really isn't that important. But it can be stacked with the Carrion Filigree Tree Crest, so if you're using an Ash of War that you feel like's taking up way too much FP, this can be an option for you. Next up, we have the Omen Helm. So this one will increase the damage of your Omen Barn and your Regal Omen Barn by 5%. So what that is, very similar to the Shining Horned Headband, will increase the weapon or the damage of an item. That item is kind of like a projectile tracking attack. So if you're not spec'd into many sorceries or spells, it can be a decent range option. It will increase it by 5% per item you can equip or per armor piece you equip. However, it only works with the chest piece and helmet, so having the gauntlets or leggings won't really improve the damage at all. But so you can get a total of 10% increased damage to those items if you have all of that equipped. Next, we have the Envoy Crown. This one will increase the damage of your bubble type skills. So for the Envoy's Crown, the Long Envoy's Horn, or the Envoy Horn, Long Envoy Horn, and the Great Envoy Horn, it'll increase the damage of those bubbles by 20%, being that the bubbles, or 15%, excuse me, being that the bubbles in this game are really, really good. Makes for a solid option. All of these added effects to the skills will stack with the Alexander Shard as well. So if you're worrying about that, it will stack together with that. Next up, we have the Jar. This one will increase the damage done by Cracked Pot and Ritual Pots by 15%. So if you wanted to use pots for whatever reason, which kind of are trash in this game because you have to craft them, you can't really just buy an infinite amount. If you wanted to, you can, but even if you don't, just wearing it as an absolute fashion statement is perfectly okay, because as you can see, it is extremely stylish. And next we'll be going over the regeneration based armor sets. First covering the Royal Remains Helm. This one will give you health regen once your character drops below 15% health, and it'll be about 2 HP per second per armor piece you have on, so they will stack, so you can have the entire set fully equipped, and then you will get a total of, what's that, 8 HP per second once you are below 15% health. So at lower levels, you're not really going to be noticing it because you're going to be just dying by the time you're actually at 15% health. And I really wouldn't stay below 15% health anyway, so there's not really much of a benefit to having this on, but there's no downside. So if you just wanted to have a build with health regen, which I do have a separate video based on a health regen build, so check that one out if you haven't already. But yeah, there's not really much downsides to not having it on, unless you want to have something else on. Next, we have the Crimson Tear Scarab. So this one will increase the benefit of your healing flask. So your Crimson Flask will get about 10% more health when you do drink it. However, like the other scarabs, they are going to be decreasing your damage negation, which is not really the greatest. So I wouldn't have it on all the time. I feel like its only use is to switch to it if you're out of combat and you're low on health. So after you're done your fight, if you're low on health, I'll switch to it. Drink, you get free 10% boost to your flask, and then to switch off the Crimson Tear Scarab. As for the Cerulean Tear Scarab, it works exactly the same way, but just for your Cerulean flask. So, same thing. If you're out of combat and you're low on FP, I'll switch onto it, drink, and then switch off. I just feel like having it on at all times really isn't the greatest thing. Next, we'll be going over the Deathbed Dress. So this one will give you health regen as well, very similar to the Royal Remains set, except this will give about 4 HP per second to you and your nearby allies. So anyone that's around you will also get that added benefit as well, which is kind of neat. It's not really the greatest thing in the world, but it's more health regen. Can't really say no to that. So if you did want to spec into a complete health regen build, this one can be a very solid option. It's not going to be when you're below 15% health like the Royal Remains set. Obvious and only downside is that it's a much lighter set, so your physical damage negation is extremely low. So you're really not going to be benefiting much of that. However, its magic negation is actually pretty decent. But yeah, that's pretty much its only downside. Next, we have the Guardian Garb, the full-blown version, or the full bloom version, excuse me. So this one will increase the healing rate of your Crimson Tears by 1.5%, but has negative fire resistance. So it will just add a little bit of your boost to your flask again, but obviously that downside of your fire negation being at a negative, which is not really great. So if you're in fire areas, wouldn't really have it on. But if you're not in like a fire area, just have it on as a little bit of a boost to your Crimson Tears flask. It will stack with the helmet, and it will stack with the talisman as well. That does give you that boost to your flask. Okay, now going over the armor sets that just give you more damage through other uses other than your spells and skills, items, things already covered. First, going over the White Mask, this one will increase your damage by 10% for 20 seconds after you inflict blood loss on an enemy. So, being that inflicting blood loss is incredibly easy in this game, you can do it in like half a second, and you just get free damage for 20 seconds, 10% damage. It stacks with pretty much almost everything in this game. I don't know. It's an obvious option for any bleed build. It just, yeah. Anyway. Next, we have where is the Black Dumpling? That's at the top. So the Black Dumpling, this one will work the same way, kinda, but after you get inflicted with madness. So for the next 60 seconds, you get 10% more damage after you get inflicted with madness, which kind of is not the greatest thing because you don't really want to be inflicted with madness. If you do, you're pretty much dead. They did just change it to where it doesn't last as long, so you're pretty much going to survive. However, only a 10% increase after that is definitely really not worth it. If it was like somewhere around about 50%, I would recommend using it and maybe spec into a madness build and try and inflict madness on yourself, and you just do more damage that way. But for 10%, I just really wouldn't risk it. Next, we have the Mushroom Crown. So, works similar. So this one will increase your damage by 10% for the next 20 seconds after you inflict poison on yourself or nearby people. So for any type of poison or Scarlet Rot as well. So any type of poison or Scarlet Rot build you have, this one's just an obvious option because there's no really downsides other than the fact that it just looks hideous. You can just use raw meat dumplings on yourself and inflict poison on yourself, and it still gives you more damage that way as well. And 10% free damage, I'll take it. Definitely really good. Next, we have the Briar Helm. This one does damage by rolling into people. So if you roll into something, or I believe jump into something also, you will do... I think it's just rolling. So it's kind of like the Armor of Thorns from Dark Souls. So if you roll into something, you just do more damage. If you equip the chest piece as well, will also give you that same benefit, whether it's altered or not. It'll do like a little bit of tick damage, so if someone's weak, you can just keep rolling into it as a meme, who knows. If you want to pop someone's bubble in PvP, can use that as well. Next, we have the Raptor's Black Feathers. This one will improve jumping attack damage by about roughly 20%, I want to say. Or it's 10%. No, it's 10% more damage to your jumping attacks, and this will stack with the Claw Talisman also. It is actually a decent looking chest piece that has decent stats, so just using it for any type of build, because jumping attacks in this game are absolutely amazing. Being that it stacks with the Claw Talisman, you really can't go wrong. It's definitely one of the better armor sets in the game, or armor pieces in the game, being that it's on a chest piece where most of the boosted effects don't really come from a chest, they come from the helmet. There's no reason as to why you shouldn't just always have this on at all times. Pretty much the best chest piece in the game. Okay, now I'll be going over the armor pieces that improve your stats one way or another. So first, going over the Carlos or the Carolus Glintstone Crown. This one will give you +3 intelligence and slightly reduce your stamina by about roughly 9%. Next, the Livinus Glintstone Crown. This one will give you +3 intelligence and slightly reduce your HP, so I'd rather have this one, because you definitely don't want to decrease HP in this game. Next, you have the Lazuli Glintstone Crown. This one will give you +3 intelligence and +3 dexterity, but reduce your HP. I would rather just not have this on. I'd rather have that more HP than +3 dexterity, unless you had something particular in mind. The Witch's Glintstone Crown. This one will give you +3 intelligence, +3 arcane, but reduced stamina. So once again, stamina in this game, not really that hard to counteract, so still pretty decent. As for the Twin Sage Glintstone Crown, this one will give you +6 intelligence and reduce your stamina and HP by, I think, roughly 10%, which is definitely not what you want unless you really wanted to do more damage with something, but I'd just rather have more HP and stamina. So if you had like a glass cannon build, this is a solid option, but other than that, I really wouldn't go there. Moving on, we have the Silver Tear Mask. This one will give you a +8 to arcane, but decrease your overall damage AR by, I think, roughly 10%. So I just, unless you were going for a bleed build where you didn't really care much for your weapon AR and just wanted to spec into just doing more bleed damage, and you were kind of low on arcane, then maybe, but even then I still wouldn't really have this on under any circumstance. And I believe, no, yeah, I see, I just wouldn't have this on. The Albinuric Mask. So this one will give you a +4 to arcane and reduce the HP recovery effects of your flask, your Crimson Flask. So if you were using this on something like PvP where you're not really healing anyway, this is perfectly fine. But outside of that, because I think it decreases the effect by about 10%, I really wouldn't have it on unless you just wanted to just look absolutely stunning and amazing. Yeah, other than that, I wouldn't really have it on. Next, we have the Mask of Confidence. This one will give you a +3 to arcane. Next, we have the Preceptor's Big Hat. This one will give you a +3 to mine and slightly decrease stamina by, I think, roughly 9%, I want to say. Next up, we have the Queen's Crescent Crown. This one will give you a +3 to intelligence. Let's go over next. The Okina Mask. This one will give you a +3 to dexterity, but lower your focus. So I'm pretty sure your focus is your things like your sleep and madness, I want to say. Correct me if I'm wrong, it's on something. Look it up if I'm wrong. Next, the Omen's Work Mask. This one will give you a +2 to strength. Let's go rapid fire the rest of them. Halic Tree, Night Helm. This one gives you a +2 to faith. As for all of the imp ones, they're pretty all self-explanatory, but let's give you a little showcase of them as well. So the imp cat, will give you a +2 to intelligence. The wolf will give you a +2 to endurance. The fang will give you a +2 to strength. The long tongue will give you a +2 to dexterity. The corpse will give you a +2 to faith. The elder will give you a +2 to arcane. If you also want to see what they look like real quick. That's all of them. Next, as for the Heimer Glintstone Crown, this one will give you a +2 to strength, +2 in intelligence. However, it will reduce your FP by, I want to say 5 to 10%. So, unless you didn't really care much for your FP at all, this can be an okay option, only +2, so not really benefiting much. The Great Hood will increase your intelligence and faith by 2, but reduce your HP. There are really not many cases where you want to increase both of your intelligence and faith, so I just really wouldn't recommend having this on. Unless you just... I mean, it looks pretty cool, not gonna lie. I vibe with it. As for the Herodotus Glintstone Crown, this one will give you +2 on intelligence, +2 to endurance, but slightly decrease your FP. So once again, if you don't really care much for your FP, I think it's about 5%. Having this on, just to have a bit more to your stats, is perfectly fine. As for the Crimson Hood, this one will give you a +1 to Vigor. The Navy Hood will give you a +1 to Mind. The Sacred Crown Helm will give you a +1 to Faith. The... Where is... Do I have it here? I don't think I have it here, but the Consort Mask, I believe I should have it here. Here it is. Consort Mask will give you a +1 to Dexterity. As for the Ruler's Mask, will give you a +1 to Faith. The Marias Mask will give you a +1 to Arcane. The Halictree Helm will give you a +1 to Faith. And as for... That's all the helmets. As for the armor sets, the only ones that do will be the Commoner's Garb. So whether it's altered, simple, or not, it'll just give you a +1 to Faith in every single one. Okay, time for the miscellaneous section. So this is pretty much just the rest of them, really. So just pretty sure after this, will be every single armor set with a special effect. So first going over the Pumpkinhead, this one will take reduced damage to the head. So headshots or just any shots towards the head will actually be taking less damage, which is honestly pretty decent. You actually get hit in the head a lot more than you think. So not really like arrows to the head in terms of like headshots. Even like upward attacks where like they're swinging down, even a lot of those attacks will hit you in the head. So you'll notice that might save you more than you think. So it can be a very solid option to just use throughout. In PvP, PvE, pretty decent. The Duelist Helm and Rotten Duelist Helm, this one will attract enemy aggro. So it is like a downside in pretty much 99% of the time. But if you did want to get something's attention that was far away, because if you want to bait enemies out one at a time, it can be pretty useful. I don't think it stacks with the Talisman. I'm not too sure. I haven't really noticed much difference. It might stack with the Talisman. The Shibari's Woe Talisman. Yeah, I haven't really noticed much of a difference there. As for the armor set that you get with it, it will add... I'm pretty sure it does the exact same thing. I don't think it adds to the benefit at all. I'm not too sure if the altered version of it also works. I don't know. There's not really much to it as well, so... as for the Black Knife Armor, this one will make your footsteps quiet. So I'm pretty sure it works the exact same way as that one Talisman does. So if you want to go for like a stealth build, I'm not sure if they stack together, so I think they do stack, but it works like the exact same way anyway. One thing to keep in mind that the altered version of this does not actually give you that added benefit. So the regular Black Knife Armor will give you that added benefit of being quieter with your footsteps, but the altered version will not. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that would cover pretty much all of the armor sets that do have a added benefit. If you want to just cover armor sets in general as a whole, please let me know. If you want to know which ones have like the best stats for like poise or just damage negation, or just overall like damage negation to weight ratio. If you want to make a video similar to something like that, just let me know. But yeah, that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to cover in this video. Let me know if I did miss anything. I probably did for how long that this video was or how much content there was in this video. And yeah, hopefully by the time this video is up, I will be streaming. So if you haven't already, once again, follow my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Yui_. I'll link it down below as well. And yeah, subscribe and like if you haven't already. And see you in the next one, guys. Peace.